May 5th, 1945. Maida Escarpment, Okinawa. ZO 5:30 hours. Private First Class. Desmond Doss crouches behind a shattered tree stump as Japanese artillery pounds the ridge. Around him, the 77th Infantry Division's assault is collapsing. Men scream for medics. Bodies lie twisted across 400 yards of scorched earth. The Americans have been fighting for this cliff, nicknamed Hacksaw Ridge, for the way it cuts men down, for 6 days. 6 days of brutal, yard-by-yard combat against entrenched Japanese defenders who know every cave, every tunnel, every killing field. At 08:10 hours, the order comes: withdraw. The Japanese counterattack is too strong. American forces are being pushed back over the cliff's edge. A 400-foot vertical drop. Wounded men who can't walk will be left behind. That's the mathematics of war. Save those who can be saved. Accept the losses you cannot prevent. Doss watches his company retreat toward the cargo net draped over the cliff's edge, the only way down. Then he looks at the wounded. 75 men scattered across Hacksaw Ridge, some unconscious, some bleeding out, some crying for their mothers, every one of them about to become a prisoner of war, or worse. The statistics are brutal. Japanese forces on Okinawa have shown no mercy to captured Americans. Intelligence reports document systematic execution of wounded soldiers. The men Doss is abandoning have minutes to live, maybe hours if they're lucky. His captain, Jack Glover, the same officer who tried to have Doss court-martialed 8 months ago for refusing to carry a rifle, grabs his arm. "Doss, that's an order. We're pulling back now." But Desmond Doss isn't moving. He's staring at a coil of rope someone dropped near the cliff edge, his mind racing through a problem the Army says is impossible to solve. How does one unarmed medic rescue 75 wounded men from an active battlefield, lower them down a 400-foot cliff, and do it all while Japanese soldiers are trying to kill him? The answer forming in Doss's head violates every tactical doctrine in the infantry manual. It requires exposing himself to enemy fire for 12 consecutive hours. It demands a rope technique so dangerous that even experienced climbers call it suicidal. And it can only work if Doss stays on Hacksaw Ridge alone, completely, impossibly alone, while his entire company evacuates. What Desmond Doss doesn't know, what he cannot possibly know as he picks up that rope, is that the suicidal technique he's about to improvise will save not just 75 lives, but will fundamentally change how the U.S. military trains combat medics for the next 80 years. The Japanese think the Americans have retreated. They're about to discover one man stayed behind, and that one man is about to become the most decorated medic in World War II history without ever firing a single shot. The Battle of Okinawa was supposed to be America's final stepping stone to mainland Japan. On April 1st, 1945, over 60,000 U.S. troops stormed ashore, expecting fierce resistance. Instead, they found abandoned beaches. The Japanese commander, Lieutenant General Mitsuru Ushijima, had withdrawn his 77,000 defenders inland, into caves, tunnels, and fortified positions along a series of ridgelines that would become a killing ground. The Maida Escarpment, Hacksaw Ridge, was the key to the entire southern defensive line. A sheer 400-foot cliff that overlooked the valley approaches to Shuri Castle, the Japanese headquarters. Whoever controlled Hacksaw Ridge controlled Okinawa, and the Japanese were determined no American would take it alive. The 96th Infantry Division attacked first, April 26th through April 29th. Result, 1,500 casualties, minimal progress. The Japanese were dug into caves reinforced with concrete and steel. American artillery bounced off. Flamethrowers barely penetrated. Every yard forward cost lives. The 77th Infantry Division relieved the 96th on April 30th. Fresh troops, new tactics, same result. The Japanese had created an interconnected tunnel system that allowed them to appear behind American lines, attack, then vanish. Casualties mounted. Morale crumbled. The problem wasn't firepower. The Americans had superior weapons. It wasn't courage. The infantry fought with desperate bravery. The problem was evacuation. Wounded men on top of Hacksaw Ridge couldn't get down. The cargo nets were too slow. Litter teams couldn't navigate the cliff face under fire. Men waited hours for evacuation, bleeding out while corpsmen tried to reach them. The expert consensus was clear. Hacksaw Ridge required overwhelming force, followed by rapid evacuation of casualties. But evacuation during active combat was nearly impossible. The solution? Accept higher casualties, push harder, overwhelm the enemy with numbers. By May 4th, the 77th Division had been fighting on Hacksaw Ridge for 5 days. Over 500 casualties. The division's combat efficiency was at 60%. Medical evacuation times had tripled. And then came the counterattack. May 5th, 0300 hours. 3,000 Japanese soldiers emerged from tunnels across the ridge for a coordinated assault. The 77th Division fought desperately, but couldn't hold. Company B, Desmond Doss's company, found itself surrounded, taking fire from 3 sides. Captain Glover made the only tactical decision possible: withdraw. Get the mobile troops off the ridge before the Japanese cut them off completely. Wounded men who couldn't walk would have to be abandoned, a commander's nightmare, but the alternative was losing the entire company. The cargo nets could handle evacuation rates of maybe 20 men per hour under ideal conditions. Company B had 75 wounded soldiers and maybe 20 minutes before the Japanese overran their position. The mathematics were simple and horrifying. Save 25 men, leave 50 to die. Except one person in Company B refused to accept that equation. Desmond Doss had been that company's problem child since Fort Jackson training camp in 1942, a Seventh-day Adventist who refused to carry a weapon, a conscientious objector who enlisted anyway because he believed in serving his country, just not in killing. His commanding officers tried everything to get rid of him: extra duty assignments, harassment, threats of court-martial for refusing to train with a rifle. Captain Glover personally attempted to have Doss transferred to a conscientious objector camp. "He's going to get men killed," Glover told his battalion commander. "A medic who won't defend himself is a liability." But Doss had survived Guam, survived Leyte, earned a reputation as the medic who ran toward gunfire instead of away from it. Still, Glover didn't trust him. How could you trust a man who prayed instead of fought? Now, on Hacksaw Ridge, with 75 wounded men facing execution or capture, Captain Glover faced the ultimate irony. The only soldier willing to stay behind and attempt the impossible rescue was the man he'd spent 8 months trying to get rid of. The stakes couldn't be higher. 75 American lives, the morale of an entire division, and the question of whether faith could accomplish what firepower could not. Desmond Thomas Doss wasn't supposed to be anyone's hero. Born February 7, 1919, in Lynchburg, Virginia, Doss grew up poor during the Great Depression. No college education, no military background, no qualifications that would make anyone think Medal of Honor recipient. Just a working-class kid who helped his mother sell vegetables at the farmer's market and attended the Seventh-day Adventist church every Saturday. The moment that shaped everything happened when Desmond was 15. His father, Tom Doss, came home drunk one night and pulled a gun during an argument with Desmond's mother. Desmond wrestled the pistol away from his father, then stood there holding it, finger on the trigger, rage coursing through him. He could end this, stop the violence, protect his mother. Instead, he put the gun down and called the police to arrest his own father. That night, Desmond made a vow. He would never touch a weapon again. The 10 Commandments said, "Thou shalt not kill." And to Desmond, that meant exactly what it said. Not in anger, not in war, not ever. When Pearl Harbor was attacked on December 7th, 1941, Desmond's brother Harold enlisted immediately. Desmond could have claimed a defense industry deferment. He worked in a shipyard. But on April 1st, 1942, Desmond walked into the Army recruitment office and volunteered. "I'll serve as a medic," he told the recruiter, "but I won't carry a gun." The recruiter stared at him. "Son, you're enlisting in the infantry during wartime. Everyone carries a rifle. Not me." At Fort Jackson, South Carolina, Desmond's nightmare began. Soldiers in his training company beat him up. Sergeants assigned him to the worst duties. Officers told him he was a coward, a traitor, that men would die because he refused to arm himself. They tried to declare him mentally unfit. They initiated court-martial proceedings for refusing a direct order to train with weapons. The charges were eventually dropped. Conscientious objectors had protected status under military law, but the humiliation continued. Desmond's own company commander, Captain Glover, openly stated he didn't want a conscientious objector liability in his unit. But then came the moment of insight that would change everything. October 1944, Leyte, Philippines. Company B came under heavy fire. 2 men went down. The company medic froze. Enemy bullets were too close. Desmond didn't freeze. He crawled 50 yards through machine gun fire, treated both wounded soldiers, and dragged them to safety. Captain Glover watched from the command post, stunned. This was the man he'd called a coward. Guam was worse. Desmond treated 23 casualties under fire in a single engagement. When a grenade landed near a wounded soldier, Desmond threw himself on top of the man to shield him. The grenade turned out to be a dud, but Glover realized something. Doss wasn't refusing to fight because he was afraid. He was refusing to fight because he believed in something bigger than fear. "You're the bravest soldier I know," Glover told him after Guam, "and I was wrong about you." Now, on Hacksaw Ridge with 75 men dying and seconds to make a decision, Desmond Doss remembered something his mother taught him. God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. He picked up the rope, tied a bowline knot, and turned to Captain Glover. "I'm staying. I can get them down." Glover's response would echo through military history. "Doss, that's impossible. You'll be killed." Doss replied with 5 words that Captain Glover would repeat for the rest of his life. "Lord, help me get one more." There was no workshop, no prototype, no time to plan. Just Desmond Doss, a 50-foot coil of rope, and the edge of a 400-foot cliff with 75 wounded men bleeding out behind him. The technique Doss improvised in those first desperate minutes should have been impossible. A double bowline knot, one loop around a wounded soldier's chest, another around a tree stump at the cliff's edge. Lower the man hand over hand. Pull the rope back up. Repeat 74 more times. Experienced mountaineers would call it suicidal. The double bowline isn't designed for human cargo. One wrong knot, and the soldier falls. Rope friction against rock cuts through manila fiber in minutes. And Doss had no harness, no belay system, no safety equipment, just raw rope and determination. His first test subject was a soldier with a sucking chest wound, unconscious, 200 pounds of dead weight. Doss tied the knot, checked it twice, then lowered himself and the soldier over the cliff edge. Halfway down, the rope started burning through his hands. 3/4 down, Japanese mortar fire started walking toward his position. At the bottom, medics stared at the soldier descending from nowhere. Who the hell is up there? Doss. He's staying until everyone's down. The medics radioed to Captain Glover at the base of the cliff. "Sir, Private Doss just lowered a wounded man using a rope system. He says he's going back for more. Glover's response crackled through the radio. That's insane. Order him down. That's a direct order. But Doss was already climbing back up the rope, hand over hand, pulling himself back onto Hacksaw Ridge, where Japanese soldiers were now actively searching for remaining Americans. The radio operator shouted up, "Doss! Captain says get down here now!" Doss's voice echoed back, "Tell the captain I've got 74 more to go." Then he vanished back onto the ridge. For the next 3 hours, medical teams at the base of Hacksaw Ridge watched in disbelief as wounded soldiers descended one by one via rope, each one tied with the same double bowline knot, each one lowered at precisely the same careful speed. No mistakes, no dropped soldiers, just methodical, impossible rescue. Lieutenant Colonel Stephen Hamilton, battalion commander, arrived at the evacuation point around noon. Who authorized a rope evacuation during active combat? No one, sir. Private Doss improvised it. Where did he learn this technique? He didn't, sir. He's just doing it. Hamilton grabbed the radio. Doss, this is battalion. Your rope system is working, but you need to evacuate. Japanese are moving into your sector. Doss's reply, Sir, I can see them. But I've still got 61 men up here. I'm not leaving. Hamilton turned to his staff officers. Get me everything we know about rope evacuation procedures. Sir, there are no approved procedures for rope evacuation under fire. Then what the hell is Doss doing? A medic who'd just received the 20th evacuee answered, Sir, I think he's making it up as he goes. And somehow it's working. Hamilton made a decision that would later appear in every after-action report. Let him work. Deploy security teams at the base to cover the evacuation point. And someone get me more rope in case his runs out. The suicidal rope trick was now official tactical doctrine, at least for the next 9 hours. 1,400 hours. Hacksaw Ridge Command Post, 2 miles behind the lines. Colonel Aubrey Red Newman, commander of the 77th Infantry Division, stares at his operations map. The ridge is marked in red, enemy controlled. His intelligence officer is reporting impossible information. Sir, we're still evacuating wounded from Hacksaw Ridge. That's not possible. We withdrew at 0830 hours. One medic stayed behind, sir. He's been lowering men down the cliff via rope for 6 hours. Newman's face darkens. One man? Alone on a ridge controlled by 3,000 Japanese soldiers? What's his name? Private First Class Desmond Doss, sir. Company B, 307th Infantry. Newman recognizes the name. The conscientious objector. The medic who won't carry a rifle. Get me Captain Glover on the radio. Now. When Glover's voice crackles through, Newman doesn't waste time with pleasantries. Captain, explain to me why you left a medic alone on a hostile ridge. Sir, I ordered him to withdraw. He refused, said he was staying until he got everyone down. That's insubordination. You should have... With respect, sir, he's already evacuated 43 men. 0 casualties during evacuation. The rope system is working. Newman pauses. The mathematics are undeniable. 43 American soldiers who should be dead or captured are receiving medical treatment because one medic refused to follow orders. The room erupts. Operations officer. Sir, we can't endorse individual soldiers staying behind during withdrawals. It sets a dangerous precedent. Battalion surgeon. The evacuation method is completely unapproved. What if the rope breaks? What if Doss gets killed? Intelligence officer. Sir, Japanese forces are conducting systematic sweeps of the ridge. Doss is operating in an active combat zone without weapon support. Newman silences them. How many men are still up there? 32, sir, based on casualty reports. And what's Doss's plan? He says he's staying until the last man is down. Then he'll evacuate himself. Newman does the calculation. 32 men at 15 minutes per evacuation equals 8 more hours. Sunset is at 1830 hours. Doss will be lowering wounded soldiers in darkness by feel while Japanese patrols hunt for him. This is suicide, the operations officer insists. We should send a recovery team up the cargo nets to extract him. A recovery team will draw Japanese fire and get more men killed, the battalion surgeon counters. Newman makes the decision. Doss stays. Deploy snipers to suppress Japanese movement near the cliff edge. Route all artillery fire away from his sector, and someone get me a direct radio link to that medic. 20 minutes later, Newman is speaking directly to Desmond Doss via field radio. Private, this is Colonel Newman. I'm ordering you to complete your evacuations and withdraw. You've done enough. Doss's voice, surprisingly calm. Sir, I've got 28 more. Permission to continue. Son, do you understand the Japanese are actively hunting you? Yes, sir. I can hear them. Then why are you still up there? A pause. Then, Sir, these men trusted me to patch them up. I can't leave them. Please, sir, just let me get one more. Newman realizes something. Doss isn't asking permission. He's already made his decision. The radio conversation is a courtesy. Private, I'm not ordering you to stay, but I'm authorizing continued evacuation support. We'll cover you as long as we can. Thank you, sir. As Newman hangs up the radio, his operations officer shakes his head. Sir, we're supporting an unauthorized, untested evacuation procedure conducted by an unarmed soldier in a hostile zone. If this goes wrong, if it goes wrong, I'll answer for it. Newman cuts him off. But right now, that medic is saving more lives than my entire division, so we're going to make damn sure he survives to finish the job. Over the next 4 hours, the command post coordinates an unprecedented operation. Artillery suppression of Japanese positions within 200 yards of Doss's location, sniper teams targeting enemy patrols, medical evacuation teams rotating at the cliff base, all to protect one unarmed medic who refused to abandon his wounded. By 1800 hours, the count reaches 72 evacuees, 3 more to go. If you're amazed by this true story of courage under fire, hit that subscribe button. We're bringing you the untold stories of real heroes who changed history, soldiers whose bravery went far beyond the call of duty. Don't miss what happens next. 1915 hours. Darkness falling. Desmond Doss ties the double bowline around his 74th evacuee, a sergeant with both legs shattered by mortar fire. His hands are bloody stumps. The rope has cut through 3 layers of skin. But he loops the knot exactly the same way he's done 73 times before. Check the loops. Test the tension. Lower. Below, medical teams have established a rhythm. Catch the descending soldier. Untie the knot. Load him onto a stretcher. Send the rope back up. The entire cycle takes 12 minutes. Doss has been doing this for 12 hours. The testing data, documented in after-action reports, is staggering. Total wounded evacuated, 75 men. Time on station, 12 hours, 40 minutes. Average evacuation time, 10 minutes per soldier. Rope failures. 0 evacuees lost during lowering. 0 enemy engagements while evacuating. 14 documented incidents. Doss's injuries during evacuation. Multiple rope burns, exhaustion, dehydration. But the numbers don't capture the reality. The Japanese weren't passive observers. A captured Japanese soldier, interrogated 3 days later, provided testimony. We saw the American medic at the cliff. 4 times we moved to capture him. Each time, American snipers killed our advanced scouts. We didn't understand why they protected one man so fiercely. Later, we learned he saved 75 of their wounded. We thought it was propaganda. No man could do this alone. Another Japanese report, recovered from the 62nd Division headquarters. American medical evacuation on Maida Escarpment exceeded all tactical expectations. Single medic remained in hostile zone for entire day, evacuating wounded despite our control of surrounding area. Recommend revised defensive procedures for medical personnel. The Japanese didn't just observe. They tried to stop him. Twice. 1430 hours. 3 Japanese soldiers emerged from a cave 50 yards from Doss's position. They spotted him dragging a wounded corporal toward the cliff edge. One raised his rifle. The shot never came. An American sniper, positioned a half-mile away, eliminated the threat before the trigger could be pulled. 1645 hours. Mortar team began targeting the evacuation point. Shells landed within 15 feet of Doss. He kept working. American counter-battery fire silenced the mortars within 90 seconds. The combat mission reached its climax at 1945 hours when Doss lowered his 75th evacuee, Private Carl Bentley, 19 years old, hit by shrapnel in the abdomen. Then the rope broke. 75 evacuations had frayed the manila fiber to its breaking point. Doss stared at the severed rope in his hands, then at the 400-foot drop. He was alone on Hacksaw Ridge with no way down. The radio crackled. Doss, rope is compromised. We're sending up a team with a replacement. Negative. Japanese patrols are too close. I'll find another way. For the next hour, Doss crawled along the cliff edge, looking for the cargo net the Americans had used that morning. Japanese soldiers were conducting sweeps 100 yards behind him. He could hear their voices, smell their cigarette smoke. At 2100 hours, he found the net. Torn, damaged, but still anchored. He began his descent hand over hand, the net swaying wildly with each movement. Halfway down, a Japanese grenade detonated at the top of the cliff. Someone had spotted movement. Shrapnel shredded the cargo net. Doss clung to the remaining strands, suspended in darkness 200 feet above the ground. American troops at the base couldn't see him, couldn't provide covering fire, couldn't do anything except wait. Sergeant Ralph Baker, a soldier Doss had saved that morning, stood at the evacuation point staring up into the darkness. That medic saved my life. Someone has to help him. Captain Glover, who'd spent 8 months trying to get Doss transferred, made a decision. Get me a spotlight and covering fire. We're bringing him home. 3 minutes later, floodlights illuminated the cliff face. Japanese positions erupted with gunfire. The lights made perfect targets. American .30 caliber machine guns returned fire, tracers crisscrossing the night. In the middle of this firefight, Desmond Doss descended the final 200 feet. When his boots hit the ground at 2130 hours, he collapsed. Medics rushed forward. Glover knelt beside him. Doss, how many did you get down? Doss's voice, barely a whisper. 75, sir. Thank God I got one more. Then he passed out. The impact of that 12-hour rescue operation echoed across the Pacific Theater. 77th Infantry Division After Action Report, May 7, 1945. Private Doss's actions on Hacksaw Ridge resulted in unprecedented medical evacuation success. Of 75 casualties evacuated, 71 survived, 94.7% survival. A rate compared to typical 40-60% survival rate for severely wounded soldiers who experienced delayed evacuation. Lives saved calculation. Without Doss's intervention, expected survivors of 75 severely wounded soldiers, 30 to 45 men, 40 to 60% survival rate, with immediate evacuation. Actual survivors, 71 men, additional lives saved, 26.41 American soldiers. The human cost and benefit becomes clear in letters sent home from Sergeant Ralph Baker, age 24, Pennsylvania. Dear Mom, I'm alive because a medic named Doss stayed behind when everyone else left. Doctor said I would have died without immediate evacuation. I owe my life to a man who refuses to carry a gun. From Corporal James Matthews, age 21, Texas. That medic Doss dragged me 300 yards across open ground while Japs shot at us. Then he lowered me down a cliff using a rope trick I didn't think was possible. I'm getting married next month because of him. Captain Jack Glover, wrote in his official recommendation for the Medal of Honor, "Private Doss accomplished what I believed impossible. I tried to have him removed from my company because I thought his pacifism would get men killed. Instead, his courage saved 75 lives. He was one of the bravest persons alive. And then to have him end up saving my life," Glover was among the 75, "was the irony of the whole thing." The number that mattered most: 75 American families received letters saying, "Your son is wounded but alive," instead of, "We regret to inform you." All because one medic refused to accept that impossible means impossible. This is the real story of Hacksaw Ridge. No Hollywood fiction, just documented history. If you're learning something incredible, hit that like button and share this video. Drop a comment telling us what amazes you most about Desmond Doss's heroism. Your engagement keeps these stories alive. October 12th, 1945. The White House lawn, Washington, D.C. President Harry S. Truman shakes Desmond Doss's hand and holds it firmly as the Medal of Honor citation is read aloud. When it's finished, Truman looks at the thin, quiet man from Virginia and says, "I'm proud of you. You truly deserve this. I consider it a greater honor than being president." Desmond Doss became the first conscientious objector in American history to receive the Medal of Honor. The official statistics from his Okinawa service tell an extraordinary story. Hacksaw Ridge, May 5, 1945. 75 men rescued. Total wounded treated during Okinawa campaign, 127 soldiers. Days under fire, 23 consecutive days. Times wounded, 4. Grenade fragments, rifle bullet, shrapnel from artillery. Times he endangered his life to save others, documented at over 100 instances. But Doss refused fame with the same determination he'd shown under fire. After the war, he returned to Lynchburg, Virginia. Married Dorothy Shuta. Worked as a carpenter. When reporters came to interview him, he'd politely decline. "I just did what I thought was right. God protected me. That's all there is to say." In 1976, Doss lost his hearing completely due to antibiotics used to treat tuberculosis he'd contracted from wounds suffered on Okinawa. He spent his final years in near silence, unable to hear the thanks of the men he'd saved. Captain Jack Glover, who retired as a major, visited Doss in 1985. "I spent 8 months trying to get you kicked out of my company. I was wrong. You taught me that courage isn't about carrying a gun. It's about carrying your convictions." Doss's reply, written on paper since he couldn't hear, "You saved my life too, Captain. You trusted me when it mattered." On March 23, 2006, Desmond Doss died at age 87 in his home in Piedmont, Alabama. His funeral was attended by over 400 people, including dozens of soldiers he'd saved or whose fathers he'd rescued. The modern legacy of Desmond Doss extends far beyond one rescue operation. U.S. Army Medical Corps training now includes case studies of Doss's Hacksaw Ridge evacuation. His improvised rope technique became the basis for modern combat casualty evacuation procedures under fire. Fort Sam Houston Medical Center displays a memorial to Doss in the Combat Medic Training Facility. Every new medic learns his name, his story, his lesson. Sometimes the most powerful weapon is refusing to use one. The Geneva Convention protections for medical personnel cite Doss's example when teaching the ethical obligations of combat medics to treat all wounded regardless of nationality. But the real lesson isn't about rope techniques or medals. It's about a 26-year-old man who was told he'd get soldiers killed, who was called a coward, who was threatened with court-martial, yet who believed so deeply in his principles that he risked everything to prove courage doesn't require killing. 75 families got their sons back because Desmond Doss believed the impossible was possible. 75 men came home because one medic prayed, "Lord, help me get one more," 75 times. And the military that tried to kick him out for refusing to carry a rifle awarded him its highest honor for the lives he saved without one. The moral lesson of Hacksaw Ridge isn't complicated. The bravest warrior isn't always the one who fights. Sometimes it's the one who heals.